talk about closures in Swift. Closures were once called blocks in Objective-C and some other languages. In other languages, they're also called lambdas or functions, not to be confused with Swift functions, which they would call methods in that case. And it's not a complicated subject, but it can be syntax confusing. So let's get to the basics, like this is what a function is, this is a return function, and here we have the equivalent in closures, and that's a closure with a return. So a closure is basically a portable function, and they're called the same way as well. And without code, they look a little bit like a shaved cat. So maybe we should have a closer look at them with some little bit of code. So that's what a function would look like with a little bit of code in it, and this is what a closure would look like with a little bit of code in it. And here we go. We have a return method, and we can even remove these parentheses. Maybe. There we go. And where is my, there we go, func and closure string. So they're both working there. In closure, we also have something called type inference. So basically, the Xcode is a little bit smart, so it can tell what you're trying to do. So it infers the return type. So we don't need to have this part, the string, to specify it, because it knows that we already have a string here. So that should be working just fine and dandy right there. But that's not really all. We can even remove the return part, because it knows about that as well. So that would work also. So closures can look quite different from the syntax once you start playing with type inference. Just comment these ones out so they don't get confused later on. There we go. However, if we're going to do something a little bit more complicated and have actual code in there besides the return, Xcode won't like that very much, because it gets, I guess, a little bit too complicated. Only like simple stuff. So it doesn't like that at all. We would have to, in that case, remove this piece of code. And the code starts in the in part. That's what's in a function. We have the brackets here, and in the closure we have in. So I have to pay attention to that. And now I've mentioned something about like a portable closure, like a portable function. So we can do something like this, declare our closure, and then we could declare a function with the closure inside it. And from here, it looks pretty much the same as a function visually. But we can go a little bit further and actually have a closure, that function that has a closure, or the closure that has a function that has a closure in it. Yeah, I keep going on like that forever. But we don't have to do that today. Kind of like a mirror that has another mirror in it. But we may want to take this a little bit further, so let's develop our code a little bit more. If we have a function with a closure in it, so this would be a function, and we're declaring a closure inside it, and this is what the closure would look like. And this is, of course, the param. What's happening is that instead of information coming into the params, it will be information that will be going out of the param. The param here in this case is int, and we have a result, and this result will be going out. It's not taking anything inside. And this is how we would make a function with a closure in it. And we would be calling the function calling the function from here with our closure, which would be here. Here's the callback. Now, func takes a completion handler. That's what we're using. This is our closure, and we're giving it our closure as a callback. That's another word for closure when it's used in this way. This is another way to write the closure. It looks a little bit different. As you notice, there's no more params here. The parenthesis is gone. Works just as fine. So these two things can look quite different. This is the closure is inside the parentheses, and this one is outside. And that's the suggested way when you have Xcode do something for you. If we were to try and call this, you see the completion is inside the parentheses. And then if we were to press this, that just disappeared. Now we have this piece. So that's the other way to call a closure, which looks quite different from the first way to call a closure. There's no more parentheses there. So that's something really important to remember and in order to recognize a closure. Just to double down on that, can make a new function that takes a closure and a regular param. And if we were to make a new function with that new closure, it would be right there. So we should get rid of this here. Try that again so it's a little bit more clear perhaps. What happened here is that here's the regular closure, and here would be the alternative way with the first with the param. Oh yeah, I'm calling the wrong one. This one we don't need to look at, but it can be. We can keep it there. Function handler too. Foo. Yeah, exactly. Missing argument there. So we have to add that in. That'd be a foobar. Put in a foobar there. So now we see there's two parameters, as there are two parameters in the function. And we see that here as well. There's foobar parameter and the completion callback parameter. The alternative way, which we can write it out again here, handler 2, and this is the regular parameter. And then here's our closure, and we'll hit enter here on our closure, and that happens. So it looks a little bit strange. We have the parameter here, and our second parameter, which was the closure, is now outside the parameters. So yeah, we should really recognize that's what it's doing. That's basically what we've done up here. A little bit interesting there. Moving on, if we come a little bit closer to some a little bit more realistic code.